Greetings, boils and ghouls. Let's do a deep dive into the most terrific host in horror, the Crypt Keeper. Hey, how you doing? It is I, the Terrific Lady, otherwise known as Brandy, and welcome to Retro Horror School, and a happy Friday to you. Yep, it is the day after Halloween, sadly, but happily, today's video is going to be exploring and doing a deep dive into the very punny, pun intended, the very punny character of the one and only Crypt Keeper. We're going to dive beneath the very murky surface of how the Crypt Keeper became an icon in horror. So let's get started. And if you have a favorite Crypt Keeper moment, favorite Crypt Keeper pun, just whether it was in the show or whether it was in the movies, just let me know in the comments below. Now, here we go. So the Crypt Keeper had origins long before he ever made his way onto TV and onto HBO. The character is born out of EC Comics in the 1950s and was part of a line of horror comics known as Tales from the Crypt, The Vault of Horror, and Haunt of Fear. Each of those comics had a main host who was known as a ghoul lunatic. The Crypt Keeper was the main host of Tales from the Crypt. The Vault of Horror was hosted by the Vault Keeper, and the Haunt of Fear was hosted by the Old Witch. But the interesting thing about these hosts is that each comic's hosting, so to speak, was shared. For instance, in a single issue of Tales from the Crypt, two parts of the comic will be hosted by the Crypt Keeper, one by the Vault Keeper, and one by the Old Witch. And they had a kind of rivalry of sorts going on, and it would be played up to very comedic effect, mainly in the letters to column in the comic. In Tales from the Crypt Keeper would guide readers through very twisted, almost morality tales to where really weird, gruesome things happen, and then there's some kind of lesson to be learned at the end of it all. Think of it as a very twisted version almost of Aesop's fables. These comics set the tone for horror as almost humorous entertainment and holding up a dark and humorous mirror to society. These comics, strangely enough, were blamed for juvenile delinquency and all of those kids, doing all these things. And the Comics Code of Authority did not like that. And it went after all those comics, Tales of Terror, Vault of Horror, and Tales from the Crypt. And the last issue of Tales from the Crypt was published in 1955. But the Crypt Keeper's personality, his punny nature, that kind of impish, mischievous tone, all started here with the comics. So now we're going to fast forward a bit to the very late 80s, early 90s. HBO wanted to adapt Tales from the Crypt into a show, and they needed a host. But instead of going with the very typical comic host, a guy in a hooded robe and maybe a hook-nosed and kind of aging skin, they decided to go with an animatronic instead. He was an animatronic puppet with a face that only a mother could love, and he even mentions and talks about his origins in the episode Lower Birth, season 2, episode 14, if you're interested. And a little side note, because it was HBO, Tales from the Crypt wasn't held up to the network standards that most networks had, as HBO was a premium cable station. So it could show things like violence, gore, nudity, sex, and profanity. Now, it was not the first show on the HBO network. That honor goes to the 80s show The Hitchhiker, which is, interestingly enough, similar to the stories that have a lesson at the end of it, except instead of a host being the Crypt Keeper, it was a hitchhiker who was either walking along the side of the road or someone would pick him up and he would be telling them these stories. The Crypt Keeper puppet was groundbreaking, and it took 6 people to bring this animatronic puppet to life, to move his head, to do his facial expressions, to move his arms and legs. So it took 6 people to move that puppet. But to bring the puppet's voice to life, it was none other than John Kassir.
Be careful what you ask for. You may get it.
He took that punny nature of the Crypt Keeper and turned it into this voice and laugh.
Tales from the Crypt.
That is just strangely charming, but also kind of creepy at the same time. So, what's to be expected from the Crypt Keeper? Nothing less. What makes the Crypt Keeper so interesting and unique is his dark sense of humor. The puns are cheesy. The jokes that he tells sometimes makes you want to go, ugh, and like slap yourself in the head.
Boy, do I love this time of year. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Jack Frost nipping at your... Hey, Jack, get away from me. Greetings, Hack and Field fans. I hope you're in the mood for a little fiendly competition. It's that time of fear again. The annual All-Crypt Die-Cathlon.
That blend of horror and humor shows people that horror can be both fun and scary in equal measure. In a sense, Tales from the Crypt and the Crypt Keeper helped to make horror more approachable. His puns and his jokes gave the scare a softer edge, not too much, but just a little bit. And in my opinion, it tended to draw in audiences who may not have been fans of horror to begin with. So, in fact, I am a huge fan of Tales from the Crypt, have been since 1989, and Tales from the Crypt and the Crypt Keeper is what got me into horror, even though Hellraiser was the first horror movie that I saw. Tales from the Crypt got me to really and truly love horror. Do you have the same thoughts about Tales from the Crypt? Did it get you to really love horror as well? Let me know in the comments below. The Crypt Keeper became a horror and pop culture icon, and he was more than the host of Tales from the Crypt. There was a Saturday morning Tales from the Crypt cartoon. He was in music videos.
This is the Keeper, where I have a tasty treat, inviting you all to a feast. Only the best of fiends can come. We'll have skeletons of fun. So come on down to the Keeper Zoo. I'm sure it will get rave reviews. Be on time if you can. But this is the picture.
He was in commercials. There was even 2 Tales from the Crypt movies, Demon Knight and Bordello of Blood. His look and his laugh are the 2 things that made the Crypt Keeper instantly recognizable. Because the Crypt Keeper is a horror icon, he's as recognizable as, say, Michael, Jason, or Freddy. And he is a wisecracker a lot like Freddy, but what makes the Crypt Keeper unique, besides the fact that he's an animatronic puppet, what makes him unique is that he was both a host of the show and almost a meta commentator, commenting on the aspects of the story. And that in and of itself is very interesting. And I have to wonder if it influenced things like Scream, which is also a meta horror film. Tales from the Crypt may have aired its last episode in 1996, but you can't keep a good ghoul down. The Crypt Keeper lives on. He showed that horror could be scary, self-aware, and fun, paving the way for genre mashups, and horror that offers meta commentary. So even modern horror hosts and anthology narrators owe something to the Crypt Keeper, not only in the show, but from EC Comics as well. From anthologies like Creepshow and shows like American Horror Stories 1984 with the whole campfire aesthetic it has going on, the Crypt Keeper set the standard. Each episode is less than 30 minutes long, and it is just a reminder that, hey, if you're looking for horror that is a good time and that will make you laugh, and that will make you sometimes smack your head at all the punny commentary that is going on, then Tales from the Crypt is just definitely going to be for you. Sadly, it is not available on streaming. I have been told that episodes are up for free on YouTube. And also, you can find good deals on Tales from the Crypt, the complete series, on eBay. I got mine for $40. And I am a big physical media fan, so I had to have this to own on my shelf. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive into the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt. What is your favorite episode of this show? Or what are your thoughts on the Crypt Keeper? Let me know in the comments below. Give this video a like, a thumbs up, and share it with fellow retro horror fans, fellow Tales from the Crypt fans. It really does help. Also, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so that way you never miss a retro horror school class. I'm going to pop up a few more videos here that I think you might like. And sadly, class is dismissed, everybody, for now, but I will see you next time. Bye.